It all started one night when I decided to change my Wi-Fi password. Simple enough, right? I was tired of the slow internet, and I had noticed some random devices connected to my network. So I changed it. No big deal, just a quick reset. Little did I know, this one small action would spiral into a full-blown neighborhood drama. It was around midnight when there was a knock on my door. Now, I've had the occasional late-night VY tour friends, delivery guys, but this was different. I opened the door, and there they were. Two police officers, flashlights in hand, standing like they were about to arrest me for a federal crime. And right behind them, of course, was Karen, the neighbor from hell. Her arms were crossed, face red with fury, and she was grinning like she had just solved the biggest cybercrime in history. "Sir, we've received a complaint about unauthorized hacking," one of the officers said, barely suppressing a yawn. "Your neighbor claims you illegally accessed her Wi-Fi and tampered with her internet connection." I blinked. Twice. Then I started laughing. This had to be a joke, right? I mean, changing a Wi-Fi password is hardly a federal offense. But Karen wasn't laughing. She stood there with a smug look on her face, confident that she had caught the criminal mastermind. And, to top it off, she still had her oversized sunglasses on at midnight. "Ma'am," I said, rubbing my temples. "You're telling me that I hacked your Wi-Fi? The Wi-Fi that I pay for in my own house?" "Yes." Karen snapped. "I don't know how, but you did. My son and I have been using it just fine for months, and then suddenly boom, no internet. The only thing that changed was that you messed with it." Wait, hold on. She had just admitted to freeloading off my Wi-Fi right in front of the police. I had to take a moment to process that. The officer, clearly regretting his life choices, sighed and turned to me. "Sir, could you explain what happened?" I exhaled, trying to stay calm. "Okay, here's what happened. My internet was running slow, so I checked my router settings. Turns out, there were multiple devices connected that weren't mine. I changed the password. That's literally all I did." Karen gasped, like I had just confessed to arson. "Exactly. You cut off our access without warning. That's illegal." I looked at the officers, waiting for them to shut this down. But they exchanged a glance. They were probably debating whose turn it was to deal with this mess. Finally, the older officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, your neighbor has every right to change his password. It's his internet." Karen's face twisted into something ugly. "No, you don't understand. This is a community. We share things here. And now my son can't even do his homework." Now, I almost choked on that one. "Homework," I said. "Your son spends all night screaming into a gaming headset and trash-talking strangers online. And now you're telling me he can't do homework." Karen gasped again, like I had just insulted the queen herself. She was furious. At this point, even the officers were starting to look like they'd rather be anywhere but here. The younger officer sighed, his patience running thin. "Sir," he said, "do you want to press any charges?" I stared at him, confused. Press charges against her? The officer scratched the back of his head. "Technically, if she's been using your internet without permission, that could be considered theft." Karen's eyes widened, and I could see her processing that she might actually be in the wrong here. But instead of backing down, she turned into a whirlwind of fury. I thought about it for a second. It would be tempting to get back at her, expose her for the entitled, freeloading neighbor she was. But I didn't want to escalate things. I was just trying to get a good night's sleep. "No," I said, "I don't want to press charges. I just want to sleep." The officers nodded, clearly relieved. They turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, stop using your neighbor's Wi-Fi without permission. If you have an issue, call your SARE VYC Pro VWider. Have a good night." Karen, still sputtering with rage, stormed off, but not before pointing a trembling finger at me. "This isn't over." As soon as the door shut, I muttered under my breath, "Oh, I know." The next morning, I woke up to a new nightmare. My mailbox was stuffed with angry handwritten notes from Karen, each one more dramatic than the last. One read, "Saw shame on you for destroying community spirit, Saw." Another said, "Saw God sees what you did." Saw and the real Kikera fake petition titled Saw, make Marcus give back the Wi-Fi Saw, with Karen's name, signed a dozen times in different handwriting. Then came the rumors. I walked into the coffee shop to hear two elderly women whispering behind their cups. "That's him," one of them muttered. "The hacker." At the grocery store, a dad yanked his kid away from me like I was a criminal. Even the mailman gave me a look of pity. Karen had somehow conned VY and said half the neighborhood that I was some EVYL tech wizard who had locked everyone out of the Wi-Fi. But things were about to get even stranger. That night, while double-checking my router settings, I noticed something weird. A DVYC was still connected to my network, but it wasn't Karen's. I frowned. This shouldn't have been possible. I had reset the password twice. There was no way anyone should still be connected. My heart started pounding. Someone was in my network. I traced the DVYC's active VY tie, and that's when things got interesting. Whoever it was, they weren't just browsing the internet, they were doing something shady. Files, logins, transactions. Something fishy was going on. And then I saw the IP address. The location wasn't from my house, it was coming from Karen's. My stomach dropped. Someone in Karen's house wasn't just stealing Wi-Fi. They were involved in something bigger. I couldn't ignore this. I knew Karen was a pain, but this was different. This wasn't just entitlement. This was illegal. So, I decided to set a trap. I reopened my Wi-Fi network, but disguised it under a different name, something generic, like SAW Free Public Wi-Fi SAW. Then I enabled a tracking program to monitor exactly what was being accessed. It took less than 10 minutes before the mystery DVYC popped up again. And this time, whoever it was, they weren't just browsing the internet, they were accessing accounts, banking information, and even cryptocurrency wallets. Marcus's eyes widened. This wasn't just freeloading. This was hacking. I felt my stomach twist. If someone in Karen's house was running illegal operations through my Wi-Fi, this could be serious. It could even get me in trouble if authorities traced it back to me. I needed proof. I watched as the DVYC connected to a private server, something beyond just casual browsing. Whoever was behind this knew what they were doing. At that point, I knew I couldn't handle this alone. I needed to confront Karen. But I had to be careful. Marching over there with accusations wouldn't work. She'd just deny everything and twist it to make herself the VY Tim. So, I printed out the connection logs, timestamps, and a detailed report of the unknown DVYC's active VY tie. She wanted to scream at me again? Fine. But this time, I had EVY Denke. When I knocked on her door, Karen answered with a glare. "Oh, look who it is," she said. "Come to apologize?" I held up the papers. "We need to talk." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, what now? Did I breathe too loudly? Did my lawn offend you?" I took a deep breath. "Someone in your house is hacking accounts using my Wi-Fi." Karen blinked, her face actually looking confused for a second. "What are you talking about?" I handed her the papers. "These logs show a DVYC connecting from your house. It's been accessing financial data, personal logins. This isn't just about Wi-Fi anymore, Karen. This is serious." She skimmed the papers, frowned, then scoffed. "This is ridiculous. I don't even know what half of this means." I studied her face. She wasn't lying, she had no idea that someone in her house was behind this. Then, as if the realization hit her, her eyes narrowed. She turned toward the stairs and yelled, "Brad!" A chill ran down my spine. Oh no. Footsteps pounded from upstairs. And then her son, Brad, appeared at the top of the staircase, looking about 17, wearing headphones and gripping a laptop like his life depended on it. Karen held up the papers. "Explain this." Brad's face turned pale. I don't know what that is." Karen's nostrils flared. "Marcus says someone in this house has been using his Wi-Fi. What's this about hacking?" Brad swallowed. "That's stupid. I don't know anything about that." But the way Brad gripped his laptop like it was his lifeline told me everything I needed to know. He was nervous. Too nervous. Karen's voice dropped. "Bradley, give me the laptop." Brad took a step back. "Mom, no." Karen's tone sharpened. "Give it to me." Brad hesitated, but before he could react, Karen lunged forward, snatching the laptop from his hands. I braced myself as she flipped the laptop open, but then she stopped. Her face twisted in shock. Brad took a step back. "Mom, please, I can explain." Her eyes snapped up to him. For the first time, Karen looked genuinely terrified. "What is this?" she whispered. I peered over her shoulder. The screen displayed a list of stolen accounts streaming SARE VYCES, banking logins, credit card information, all under different usernames. Brad had been hacking people's private data, and that was when everything started to go south for Karen. The rest of the story, well, it unraveled faster than I ever expected. The FBI arrived. Brad was arrested. Karen was in full-on panic mode, trying to make excuses. She even tried to get me to cover for her, offering me cookies like I was some sort of fool. But it was too late. The truth had already been exposed. By the end of the day, Karen was gone. And as I watched her pack up her things, one of my neighbors, George, gave me a nod. "I heard Karen had to move out," he said. I smirked. "Yep." George chuckled. "Guess that means you won." I stood there, taking in the peaceful air of the neighborhood. "Oh yeah," I said, "I definitely won." So what do you think? Who's really at fault here, Karen for freeloading and trying to manipulate the situation, or me for changing my Wi-Fi password? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have handled it differently? Let me know.